Hello everybody, welcome to another ranking video, and today we are doing perhaps the most famous and well-beloved band of all time, the Beatles. I'm doing the Beatles because everybody's been talking about the Beatles this week after the, I suppose, strange casting choices they have announced for the upcoming Sam Mendes Beatles biopic films that are due to release in 2028. Maybe that's another video I'll do my actual opinion of those, but this is obviously, I'm a massive Beatles fan, probably my favourite band of all time, so let's get straight into it. Coming in at dead last place is the Yellow Submarine, which is, in my opinion, not really a real Beatles album. It's got a couple of original Beatles tracks on the first side, and then the other side is George Martin's orchestral score for the 1968 film Yellow Submarine, which I do recommend. It's a really interesting and weird part of Beatles history. As far as the new tracks that hadn't been released prior to this point, because the album does contain All You Need Is Love and Yellow Submarine, which of course had been previously released, is... the only ones that really stand out to me are Hey Bulldog and Only a Northern Song. Two songs I actually do really like. Hey Bulldog especially, I think, is actually a Beatles classic. I think it's got a really awesome bass line from Paul McCartney and a cool guitar riff. And Only a Northern Song is one of those psychedelic George Harrison tracks, but it's one I actually do quite like. I prefer the Anthology 2 version to the one that is on the Yellow Submarine soundtrack. Yeah, I'm actually really quite fond of that song. The other ones, not really anything memorable, to be honest. All Together Now, which is a pretty stupid song. What were the other ones? It's All Too Much, which is okay. And there's one more, I think, that I just can't remember. So yeah, Yellow Submarine, dead last place. I don't really know why this is considered part of the official Beatles discography, to be honest with you. Next up, we've got With the Beatles from 1963. This is the second Beatles album, and you know it's incredibly similar to the first one, Please Please Me, which we'll get to in a minute. It is a lot of covers and, you know, a couple of really decent Lennon and McCartney original tracks as well. It's a decent album. It's plenty of fun. You know, the Beatles' chemistry is always incredibly fun and wonderful to listen to. The original tracks, there's some really good ones. All My Loving is on here, which is one of the absolute greatest McCartney songs, in my personal opinion, a total classic. I was really annoyed he didn't play that when I went to see him in December. It's got a lot of kind of, you know, it's early Beatles. It's incredibly listenable. They're really fun love songs. The Lennon and McCartney originals are better than the singles. I do absolutely love John Lennon's vocals on the early Beatles stuff. I think it's absolutely wonderful. Yeah, but as far as Beatles albums go, it really isn't anything remarkable, as it is one of the earliest ones. And I'd probably, out of the main Beatles albums, I'd probably say that it is the one I reach to the least. Though I do certainly enjoy it, obviously, because it's the Beatles. So yeah, With the Beatles. Number 10, we have Beatles for Sale, which is, again, not really a bad album at all. It is just kind of one of the more forgettable Beatles records, though it has got some excellent songs on it. I'm a Loser is one of my favourite Lennon tracks from that era. I think it's a fantastic song. Apparently it was very Bob Dylan influenced in the songwriting, and the production's really nice. It's got some classics on it. It's got 8 Days a Week on it, which isn't really one of my favourites, but I'm a Loser is really good, like I said. I'll Follow the Sun is a beautiful McCartney track, and then it's just got some kind of, yeah, it's not really one of the more outstanding Beatles albums. It's got some listenable tracks, but overall it's definitely one of the weaker ones. Rock and Roll Music's okay. Words of Love is pretty nice. I Don't Want to Spoil the Party is pretty nice, but overall, one of the weaker Beatles albums. Next up at number 10, we have got Please Please Me from 1963. It's obviously the debut album. And the reason I've got this a little bit higher than With the Beatles and Beatles for Sale is because with it being the debut, I think there's loads of charm to this record. And obviously, there's less Lennon and McCartney originals here. There's a lot of covers. But as I said about With the Beatles' wonderful chemistry really pops through here. And with it being the debut, that's very impressive. I really like the guitar playing. I love the harmonising. It's got some classic tunes on it. I Saw Her Standing There. Misery, which is a fantastic early Beatles song. I really like that one. The title track, you know, it's There's a Place, which is a lovely song. Yeah, I have a fondness towards this record, and though it certainly isn't the greatest Beatles album by a mile, it's a really fun listen to me, and it's a perfectly decent debut album, and you know, it does have that wonderful Beatles feel to it. At number 9, I've placed Help from 1965. I think some people would place this a little bit higher than the next album that's going to be here, but Help, though, I think the A side of this is absolutely fantastic. It's the songs from the film. Excellent vocal performances, really fun songs. You know, it's the kind of usual thing the Beatles were putting out at this time, all the kind of love tunes, but it's got the title track, which is an absolute classic. The Night Before is a really fun Paul McCartney song. It's got I Need You, which is a pretty decent George Harrison track. You've got To Hide Your Love Away. Um, Ticket to Ride, which is one that people seem to like. I'm not the hugest fan of it. You're Gonna Lose That Girl's a really, really fun song. So the first half of all the Lennon and McCartney originals is a lot of fun, and the second half of the album kind of tails off for me. It's got some certainly weaker tracks. It's got Act Naturally, which I think is one of the worst Beatles songs. It is a cover, but it's a pretty terrible Ringo song. Yeah, you like me too much. It's not brilliant. Tell Me What You See is really nice. I've Just Seen a Face is really nice. Yesterday's a classic, obviously, and Dizzy Miss Lizzy is one that the guitar riff, like many people, I find it a bit grating and kind of annoying. So it's an album that does sort of let itself down slightly in the second half, though I do find a lot of the tracks very enjoyable still. One thing I will say about Help is that you can certainly hear in bits of this album, such as tracks like You're Gonna Hide Your Love Away and Yesterday, I feel like you can hear Rubber Soul coming right around the corner, that more mature songwriting the Beatles would go to adopt. So overall, Help, it's certainly a middle of the road Beatles album for me, but it has got some absolute classics on it. Next up, we've got A Hard Day's Night from 1964. This is the first album that is completely Lennon and McCartney originals, and it's the only album that has no Ringo Starr tracks on it, strangely enough. But it's, of course, the soundtrack to the 1964 film, which, if you haven't seen, is a wonderful film. It's a really, really fun mockumentary about, like, a day in the life of the Beatles is basically the whole idea of it. It's got a lot of really fun humour and good music, which is the songs off this album. I think this is an album where Lennon's performances are absolutely spectacular. He is on most of the tracks of this album. It's a very John Lennon heavy record, and I think the songs are incredibly catchy and really, really solid. It's the first record, like I said, that is completely Lennon and McCartney original, and it's got some wonderful tracks on it. The title song, A Hard Day's Night, which is of course a classic. If I Fell, which is a beautiful song, and I Love Her, which is one of my favourite McCartney songs from this era. A really beautiful love song. Can't Buy Me Love, which is another excellent Paul McCartney one. Anytime at All, which is one I really, really like. I think Lennon's vocals are fantastic on that. Yeah, just a consistently very enjoyable record. And obviously, like all these early Beatles albums, it's very short. It just flies by. Really, really fun pop songs, cool jangly guitars and stuff, all the 60s stuff you'd expect. But it's a very, very fun record, and I really like it. And it does help that my fondness of the film kind of elevates my feelings towards the album. I don't think there's any tracks that I don't like on this, to be honest. I think it's a really, really fun record. A Hard Day's Night. Perhaps an unpopular opinion, but next up I'm putting Let It Be. Now this is an album that is quite it's quite mixed amongst Beatles fans. Obviously it's not produced by George Martin, and it's taken from obviously recordings of the Get Back sessions, so a lot of this stuff is live, and some of it is studio recorded, and it's got the Phil Spector production on it, which is, you know, all the kind of string arrangements, and I don't like any of that stuff. I would personally take the Let It Be Naked version over this, but I do think the highlights on this are so high, and it's got some of the absolute greatest ever Paul McCartney songs on it, that I've got to rank it where I have. It's obviously, it's got Let It Be, which is an all-timer. It's got Two of Us, which is a really beautiful song. It's got some fantastic rock tracks. I mean, these are all taken from the Rooftop performance, which I think is a wonderful musical performance in its imperfections, because it's not an amazing performance really if you watch it, but it is iconic and just really, really fun. You know, I've Got a Feeling. I think it's fantastic. Lennon and McCartney's kind of, I absolutely love when Lennon and McCartney kind of trade the lead vocals on tracks. I think it's fantastic. It's got some okay George Harrison songs. For You Blue is decent, and I'm Your Mine is, I'm not a huge fan of I'm Your Mine actually. It's got some album filler like Dig It and Maggie May, but you know, I guess they have their charm to them. But like I say, the highlights are so high that it outweighs some of my issues with the record. Across the Universe, absolutely wonderful song. I really like the David Bowie version of that as well, actually, which is, I think, a hot take. I don't think many people do like that. I think that as well, it's just, you know, it's kind of the last Beatles album, but it's not really the last, you know what I mean? It wasn't the last recorded, but it does have a bit of sweetness to it, and, you know, that wonderful Get Back documentary kind of revigored my my liking of this album. So Let It Be. It isn't perfect, and yeah, I will say they absolutely butchered The Long and Winding Road on this. I much prefer the other versions of it. Though McCartney's vocals are just absolutely beautiful on that track. And it hasn't got the best version of Get Back either. It's got the last take, I believe, when they were on the roof, the one that was cut kind of short. But However, I do really enjoy the record, and because those highs are so high, I've had to place it where I have. Next up is Magical Mystery Tour from 1967. Now, there is kind of a debate on whether this is actually an official part of the Beatles discography, which I'll explain basically. There was the TV movie Magical Mystery Tour, which came out, I think, on Boxing Day 1967. If you've never seen that, give it a go, because it is incredibly strange. It's just under an hour long. It doesn't make any sense. It's really weird. It's not particularly good, but it is worth a watch. So the first half of this album is consisting of an EP that was released in England, because the second half of this album is all singles from the Sgt. Pepper's sessions, but those singles are some of the absolute greatest Beatles songs of all time, and it makes for an amazing, amazing B-side, which I think really carries this record, because the A-side is alright. It isn't incredible. It's got the title track, which is okay. Fool on the Hill's nice. Flying is just a complete throwaway instrumental track. Blue Jay Way is an alright George Harrison song. I do quite like that one, actually. And Your Mother Should Know is a fun sort of McCartney, one of those weird, whimsical kind of McCartney songs. What Lennon would have called granny music. And then you get the absolutely fantastic I Am the Walrus, which is one of my favourite Beatles songs of all time, capping off the A-side, which is by far the best of the tracks recorded for the film. But that B-side, has got Hello Goodbye, which is a wonderful song, Strawberry Fields Forever, which is one of the absolute greatest songs ever made as far as I'm concerned, Penny Lane, Baby You're a Rich Man, and All You Need Is Love, capping it off. That is just an absolutely spectacular run of songs, because obviously Sgt. Pepper's didn't have any singles recorded for the album. Yeah, that B-side really carries this LP and makes it as good as it is, to be honest. Though I do enjoy the A-side enough, that B-side is absolutely solid gold and some of the greatest Beatles songs ever. So yeah, that's Magical Mystery Tour. Okay, maybe a somewhat controversial placement here now. I'm going to put Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band at number 5. Now, I will explain myself. Sgt. Pepper's is one of the most important records ever made. It is a massive LP in terms of production and musical engineering and creativity. It is a huge milestone, and it's an absolutely spectacular LP. It's one of the greatest pop albums of all time. But I do find it's a record of two halves. Now, I think the title track is a really fun introduction song. With a Little Help from My Friends is my personal favourite Ringo song. I think it's a wonderful track. I've always really, really loved that song. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is a fantastic psychedelic rock tune. Getting Better is really, really fun. Fixing the Hole is pretty cool. She's Leaving Home is spectacular. Never Liked Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite. With and You Without You is fantastic. When I'm 64 is okay. I personally love Lovely Rita. Good Morning's okay. The reprise track's really cool, and Day in Life is one of the greatest songs ever recorded. So those tracks, that kind of lull in the middle where I feel the album is let down slightly, because I really don't like Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite, and I'm not a fan of When I'm 64. And to be honest, though I said I like Fixing a Hole, I'm not hugely keen on it. So for me, I think Sgt. Pepper's as a product is an absolutely spectacular feat in music, and one of the most well-produced albums of all time, especially of its era. I don't personally find it is the most consistent Beatles album song-wise, for me. Though, again, like I say, this is absolute the Beatles at their peak creativity. It's got a lot of excellent bass playing. It's got some fantastic instrumentation on it throughout, really. I mean, there's a lot of crazy mad stuff, a lot of looping, and just, just a record that really... It's an incredibly important LP, like I say. It's an album that has shaped and influenced for many, many, many years. I do think it's a fantastic album, but it is, like I say, these next couple of Beatles albums have got more songs on them that I would go back and listen to individually. However, not to say I don't listen to a lot of the tracks of Sgt. Pepper's individually, because I do. The songs that I do love off this album are absolutely wonderful. I do think it's got some absolute masterpieces on it. So Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, number 5. That is sure to get me in a bit of hot water, but whatever. Okay, so at number 4, it's The Beatles, or The White Album, as you all know it. Now, despite what I just said about Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band not being the most consistent Beatles record song-wise, in my opinion, it more applies to The White Album, but I will explain why I've placed The White Album higher. And it's quite similar as to what I said about Let It Be. It is the highs of this record are so insanely high, and a lot of my top Beatles songs are on this album. It's a double record. So it's a chaotic LP. It is during the period in which the Beatles were, I think, experiencing a real kind of burnout in terms of the fact that they just recorded Sergeant Pepper's, which was, you know, a massive record that I think took its toll. And Brian Epstein passed away and all these things. And the failure of the Magical Mystery Tour film, I think it really played its part in a bit of fatigue within the band. There's a lot of famous history behind the White Album recording sessions, and it is a record of essentially loads of solo recordings. There's loads of little McCartney songs and Lennon songs, and George Harrison even has a fair few on here. But I absolutely love the White Album. I think what makes this album so wonderful is the chaos of it. You know, it's got so many classics. Like Back in the USSR is really fun. Dear Prudence is absolutely fantastic. Glass Onion is one of my favourite Beatles songs. I love Oplada Oplada. I know it's not brilliant, but it's a really, really fun song. While My Guitar Gently Weeps is one of the absolute greatest Beatles tracks of all time. It's got that amazing Eric Clapton guitar solo, and you know it is a contender for George Harrison's best song, other than a few that are on an album I'll talk about later. I'm sure you know the one. It's got Blackbird. I'm So Tired is a really fun Lennon track. I Will, which is a wonderful, wonderful McCartney love song. It's one of my favourite Beatles songs of all time. Julia, which is an incredibly moving tribute to John Lennon's mother. And you get the second disc, which has got Birthday, which is one of the incredibly fun rock song. Year Blues, which is, again, that's one of my favourite Lennon tracks. It's an incredibly angry and just a really cool raw blues song. I believe they recorded that in like a cupboard or something. Absolutely fantastic. Mother Nature's Son is another wonderful McCartney little acoustic piece. I do love the little Paul McCartney acoustic tracks off this album. I think they're really, really fun. Rocky Raccoon is a wonderful song. George Harrison, again, he's got some really, really good ones here. I very much enjoy Long, 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 believe it or not, which is one that doesn't really get told about all that much. Piggies is kind of a fun song. It's about like establishment classism, I guess. Of course, I've got Revolution 1, which is an acoustic outtake of Revolution, but it's a really fun listen. Towards the end, the record becomes kind of totally chaotic. It's got Safari Truffle, which is one I'm not huge on. Revolution 9, the famous Revolution 9, which is a John and Yoko piece. Absolute chaos, kind of nonsense. It's a track that divides opinion. I think some people love it and a lot of people hate it. Then it ends with Good Night, with Ringo Starr's Good Night, which is almost a bit of a nursery rhyme, isn't it? So the White Album, all those songs that I've claimed I've talked about loving is why this record's so high, and I do kind of absolutely love the chaos of it and the interesting history behind the album. I also think it is just a musically fantastic record. You've got all the guys are playing multiple different instruments, and it's just it's such an interesting project. It's a record I do really, really, really love. Despite its chaos, and it's, you know, it's weaker moments. It's got my least favourite Beatles song, Why Don't We Do It in the Road. I find that song incredibly obnoxious. But again, like I say, all the great songs on this album, and there is many of them being a double record. There's like near 30 tracks on this album. Yeah, I love the White Album. You know, sometimes, depending on the day, these last 4 records, depending on the day, you ask me, I would say each one of these is my favourite Beatles album. But today, the White Album is number 4. I love the White Album. Number 3 is 1965's Rubber Soul. Now, I feel like some people would probably rank Peppers and the White Album higher than Rubber Soul. But Rubber Soul is one of those records I have a personal connection with, and I just think it's a perfect mid-60s pop album. There were so many fantastic albums released in 1965. You've got to bear in mind, but this album is the first Beatles album in which this is the turning point in which the Beatles started writing truly spectacular songs. Now, I think the whole Beatles catalogue is pretty timeless, but this is where the Beatles really matured as songwriters. I mean, you've got Norwegian Wood, which is a fantastic track. Nowhere Man is my favourite Beatles song, for a bit of a kind of insight there. I just think it's a really incredibly wonderful self-portrait of Lennon's. It's such a spectacular track. It's got I'm Looking Through You, which is one of my favourite McCartney songs of all time. It's got In My Life, which is a stunner of a song. Michelle is absolutely fantastic. The Word is an incredibly fun, a little bit cheesy 60s pop track. I love the sound of this album. There's such a warmth to this record. It's a comfort album of mine. I just think it's absolutely fantastic from start to finish. I absolutely love I love this album. I don't really know what else to say about it. I mean, it's got so many spectacular little songs on it. If I Needed Someone is one of my favourite George Harrison songs. Though it might be a cover. I can't actually remember. I know that other bands covered it. I've heard other bands cover it. So I'm not completely sure, but I think it's a really wonderful track with an incredibly catchy guitar riff. I find this record has so much personality, and it's a wonderful, wonderful record. And the harmonies on it are tip top. Just spectacular stuff. Another track that kind of is an example of really good harmonies is the track "Girl," the John Lennon song. There is a moodiness to this album. There's a lot of kind of moody love songs on this record, and there's a lot of, I feel, self-reflective lyricism, and it's an amazing album, and it's got a lot of really peak Beatles moments, in my personal opinion. It's not without its weaker tracks. Drive My Car is a bit of a weaker one, and what's the George Harrison one in the middle? Think for Yourself, that's the one. They're the only kind of weaker moments for me, and Run for Your Life, I guess. But again, it's a record where I really love and identify with so many of the songs that I just, yeah, my personal love for the record just outshines some of its kind of downfalls. But yeah, that's why I've ranked it a bit above White Album and Sgt. Pepper's, despite those being albums that I really love. This is one that it's a comfort record, like I say. So Rubber Soul, number 3. Now this top 2 is incredibly difficult, but I've placed Revolver at number 2. Revolver is another record for me that is one that I've been listening to for such a large chunk of my life that it's an album that I find incredible joy in, and it is such a spectacular, eclectic mix of tracks and sounds and ideas. I think it is just, it's the Beatles at their absolute peak musically, as far as I'm concerned. It has got so many wonderful, wonderful songs. I mean, it's got Taxman, which is an excellent scathing attacks people. It's a great George Harrison song, and you've got Eleanor Rigby, which is one of the best songs ever made. I'm Only Sleeping, which is one of my favourite Lennon tracks, and there comes the psychedelia of this album, which is just awesome and so incredibly 60s. And everything about Revolver it's a forward-thinking record, and it is the record where the Beatles musically really evolved into that psychedelic realm in that whole period of the band. In my opinion, better than Pepper's, undoubtedly. You've got Here, There and Everywhere, which is that wonderful Beach Boys-esque Paul McCartney song, which is just, the harmonies on that are so beautiful. And it's such a gentle track. You've got She Said, which is a really cool and excellent psychedelic rock song. You've got The Good Day Sunshine, which is another really fun McCartney piano love ballad. And Your Bird Can Sing, which has got that amazing, wonderful guitar riff. And I really, really love, again, off Anthology 2, I think it is. It's got that excellent outtake version of it where Lennon and McCartney are just cracking up and laughing while they're trying to record the vocals over it. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. For No One, another one of my absolute favourite Paul McCartney songs. And you got tracks like Dr. Robert, which is really, just expresses the tightness of the Beatles playing. It's a song about Bob Dylan, I do believe. It's got, What Got to Get You Into My Life is another one of my absolute favourites. And then it's got the masterpiece on the very end, Tomorrow Never Knows, which is such a revolutionary song in terms of musical recording and looping and production. It just absolutely blows my mind. And not to mention just the album itself being so incredible. I do also adore the singles off this album. Paperback Writer is a really fun, one of my favourite rock Beatles songs. And then of course it's got Rain, the B-side, which is top 3 Beatles tracks probably for me. I think that's got Ringo's greatest ever drumming and one of Paul McCartney's coolest ever bass parts. But yeah, Revolver is just, with being one of the most diverse Beatles albums, it's an album full of wonderful ideas, and they're all executed incredibly, incredibly well. It's one of the all-time great records in my personal opinion. And it hurts me not to put it at number 1, because it is a record that I love so much, and I have listened to probably more than any other album ever made. But my number 1 album, as I'm sure you've all probably guessed by now, I do have my fair good reasons to place it number 1, I feel. So yeah, Revolver, number 2. So for number 1, I have gone with Abbey Road. Now, my reasoning for going with Abbey Road is, I think it is the ultimate Beatles album. I think it's got McCartney's greatest vocals, it's got Ringo's best drumming, it's got George's best songs, it's got some of Lennon's best bits as well. I just think this album is, it's one of the absolute greatest pop records of all time. It's got some of the best production, and again, it's got a wonderful, diverse mix of tracks, which is one of the absolute best things about the Beatles. Um, it's something, one of the most beautiful love songs of all time. Oh Darling, which has got that amazing Paul McCartney vocal. I Want You, She's So Heavy, which is just a spectacular fusion of blues and jazz. It's got some of the best Beatles. The playing on that is maybe the best of any Beatles tracks. I feel it's got incredible bass playing, awesome drumming, and wonderful guitar playing from George and John. I love the way they kind of harmonise guitar wise. It is absolutely spectacular. Here Comes the Sun is again arguably one of the greatest songs ever made. A wonderful, wonderful, wonderful song. You Never Give Me Your Money is a song I just never tire of. It's got that incredible outro, and then the wonderful medley, the Abbey Road medley, is such a spectacular piece of music, and it was such a joy to see Paul McCartney do that when I saw him. I absolutely love the Abbey Road medley, full of fantastic guitar playing and really fun songwriting. Tracks like Polythene Pan and She Came In Through the Bathroom Window I find incredibly fun songs. I think it is a perfect example of the Beatles' creativity and chemistry as a band. It's got wonderful, wonderful production. There are so many spectacular string arrangements on this album that are so beautiful. And it's the end. I think the end is such a perfect capping off of the Beatles. And in the end, the love you make is equal to the love you take. I feel that is the Beatles. That is the message of the Beatles, the message of love. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful LP, as everybody knows it is. So for all these reasons, for me thinking it's just the ultimate Beatles album, it has to be number one. The record is a masterpiece. It's a classic. What more could be said about it? It's a contender for my favourite record of all time, as is Revolver. But I really am a huge Beatles fan, so kind of a little bit biased. But Abbey Road is just it's a perfect record, really. Even Octopus's Garden. I think Octopus's Garden is an incredibly fun song. Maxwell Silverham is fun as well. If there were to be any weak points, it'd be those two tracks, but they are really fun, because it's another awesome song. Yeah, I could talk about this record all day, but I won't. So that's my number one, Abbey Road. So thank you very much for watching. That's the Beatles. I mean, yeah, here's one I was obviously going to do. I want to do a Pink Floyd ranking next, but that would take some time and some thinking. So maybe I'll try and get that within the next week. We'll see what happens, but that's been my Beatles ranking. If you have watched, if you've made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.